So I come before you tonight as your leader, making you aware that we are under attack. Now I'm not saying we're under attack because I'm surprised. I'm not coming to you saying I can't believe it, folks, but we no, I can believe it. We know that according to the word of the Lord, this is what the enemy does. This is what the devil does. He is an accuser of the brethren. Did that in the Old Testament. His tactics are somewhat still the same. He's just attacking with everything that he possibly can. So the word of the Lord lets us know that that's what he's going to do. And I just have to believe that here in the end time, in the last days, that he's going to fight harder than he's ever fought before, because he knows he doesn't have long to work. He knows that his time is very short, and he wants to. I may mess this up, but my kids told me yesterday about a popular artist, young artist, that said something to the effect of, "Well, hey, since I'm going to hell, why not make it a party?" Now, we look at that and we say, how absurd could that be? How ridiculous. The sad thing about that is there's a lot of young people that will be influenced by that statement. That let's since we're going to hell, let's just turn it into it like hell is going to be a party. This we were told that in Knoxville, at my uncle's church there, Bishop Billy McCool, their school has grown a lot, has doubled this year, maybe more, because parents are so tired of what's going on in the public school that there are students that are coming to school identifying as animals, that they're coming to school bringing litter boxes and things like this, coming to school acting like dogs and cats, animals. Listen, it's unbelievable what's going on. The perversion that is out there. I say it all the time. Be careful what you listen to. These these TikTok videos. Before you know it, there's an F-bomb in there. Before you know it, there's this in there. And if we're not careful, we'll become desensitized to these things, and it'll just become, well, that's just the way they talk. Well, that's just we've got to make a stand. We just have to realize that there is an attack. And the enemy is fighting like never before, and he's fighting the church like never before, because he knows that the world's only hope is in the church. So he's trying to disguise that. He's trying to. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a lot of attacks on churches. A lot of pastors that are falling. Not just lead pastors, but pastors within the church. And then there's it's just a lot. I don't want to get into all of that, but I just believe that the church is under attack. Now, our church, Point of Mercy, Souls Harbor, other churches that were under an attack. So I'm not just surprised by that. Or what I want to talk about tonight is what our response should be while under attack. Knowing that the enemy is doing this, how should we respond to the attack? What should we be doing? Well, I have discovered there is a lot of verses about the enemy attacking from the Old Testament through the New Testament. I could be here for the next 30 minutes just reading verse after verse about the enemy attacking and how he likes to attack. And Psalms is full of them. David, oh my goodness, so many things that David. But instead of doing that, I don't have a whole lot of scriptures. You'll know where they are and you can find them. You can just Google scriptures about the enemy attacking. You'll be amazed at what will come up. But I want to read 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse number 8. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse number 8. Now, you can go back. I'm not going to take this verse out of context. You can go back and read it, and we'll talk about it in just a moment. But I'm not doing a chapter study or a book study or anything like that. I want to use this with the topic that I'm bringing to you tonight, and that is what our response should be, after an attack. Peter says, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." Now, to just kind of break down that verse just a little bit, be sober-minded. Now, that statement or that term there, sober-minded, that is something that is associated with a person that is intoxicated. That something has overpowered their resistance. It's very much associated with alcohol, with drinking alcohol. Not being sober-minded. The alcohol, the contents in that has overpowered your ability to think straight. You're overpowered. You can't walk straight. It's just taken over. You're not yourself. However, Peter is not talking to non-believers in chapter 5. He is not dealing with a group of people that is having alcoholic issues. I certainly hope we're not having those issues in the church. We shouldn't be. We shouldn't be. I know there's a big discussion right now. Well, just a little bit's not going to hurt. What if I look? I don't at all. We do know that being drunk is a sin. Getting all buzzed up is wrong. So I take a stance. I just don't do. And I would hope that you would do the same thing. I would hope that as a Christian that you would do the very same thing. I know that's sad, but it's sad that has become a bold statement within the church. It's sad, and I'm not backing down from it. We don't, and I don't think that you should either. And I know the Apostle Paul told Timothy, drink a little wine for the stomach's sake. I get things, like that. I understand that. I don't want to get into all that. But I'm just simply saying he's not talking to non-believers. He's talking to people. When he says be sober-minded, they have an understanding of being intoxicated. Now, here's the thing that you have to understand. You can be intoxicated with things besides alcohol. There can be things that overpower you become intoxicated with. And I think that that's what the Apostle Peter is talking about. I think that because of who he is speaking to and because of the way that he is talking, I think that he is saying to them, be sober-minded. Now remember, the subject of this is there is a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. The last thing you need to be is intoxicated. Let's say with the cares of life, the good, the bad, maybe the good things of life. Sometimes if you're not careful, you can get overpowered. You can become intoxicated with the good things of life. There's some people, they're just they're all into, and let me say this, that there are things I'm not necessarily preaching against. You could just become intoxicated with it. You could become intoxicated with sports. I've seen it happen time after time after time. You can become intoxicated with just partying and having it, not even bad party, just having a good time, and things like you can get intoxicated with the cares of this life, the good and the bad, the stressful things of life. If you're not careful, this can bog you down so bad that you're not thinking properly. Think of a drunk man. Think of a drunk woman that is, I talk about them staggering. That could be you dealing with things in this life. That could be you trying to deal. And so Peter is saying, we're dealing with a lion. We're dealing with a roaring lion, or an enemy that prowls around like a roaring lion. I understand that. He wasn't necessarily calling him a lion, just saying his actions. He's trying to act like that. But you got to be sober-minded. You can't be intoxicated, understanding that the enemy, we have an enemy that can attack at any moment. You can't be intoxicated. You got to try. You got to be sober minded. You can't let these things cause you to be intoxicated. He says something else. He says be sober minded. Then he says, be watchful. Be watchful. In other words, pay attention. It's important to pay attention and be aware of what's going on around us and how the enemy will strategically attack. And I said that on purpose. He will strategically attack. He will use whatever he can to attack, or, listen carefully, or turn something into an attack. There may be something that didn't start off as an attack, but the enemy can turn it into an attack, because he can use things. He watches us. He pays attention to us. And if he finds a flaw, if he finds a weakness, if he finds us starting to become intoxicated, then he will use that to attack. I wrote this down. It said the devil don't have to send it to become a part of it. The devil don't have to send it to become a part of it. There are things that he might not have sent, but when he sees something working, then he can become a part of that and try his best to use that against us. So what am I going to do? You got to be sober-minded. In other words, sober-minded means you're thinking clearly. Whatever you do, you got to make sure you're thinking clearly, and you've got to be watchful. You got to pay attention to those things. Hey, the enemy could use this. The enemy could possibly, this is why we use the scripture a lot, don't let your good be evil spoken of. Because the enemy could use that. There's so many directions that we could go tonight, but I'm just simply saying, be watchful. You have a watchman. You have someone that is helping you watch. Now take that responsibility, take some personal responsibility and say, you know what, I've got a covering. I've got a pastor that's covering me. I've got a pastor that's a watchman that's watching out for me. Now I must take some personal responsibility, and I've got to pay attention. I've got to watch and make sure of my surroundings and what's going on. I need to be. There's a pastor that came out this week that has had a very unhealthy online relationship with a woman that is not his wife. An unhealthy online relationship. And I certainly pray for that man. I pray for his family. But the truth of the matter is, somebody wasn't watching. Somebody wasn't paying attention. Somebody wasn't thinking clearly. Somebody wasn't being sober-minded. So before you know it, be careful. Watch those. If it's an online situation, watch what's being said. If it's someone at work, if it's something, be careful what is said. Who knows what your tendency is? You have to find out the weakness that you have. Are you a person of anger? Are you a person that finds yourself, doesn't take much to, then be watchful. If you are a jealous person, if you lean toward jealousy, if you lean toward gossip, this could be an entire lesson. If you lean toward gossip, stay away from big mouth church people. If you lean toward gossip, make sure, because what the devil does, he'll try to get you around other folks that like to gossip and other folks that like to find fault within the church. And well, I don't know if they're that's the last thing that you need to be around. So I'm just simply saying, find that weakness and be watchful. Be very, very careful. If it's a lusting issue, dear God, be very, very, be watchful. Watch for those setups that the enemy will do. He goes on in the main part, the crux of the verse is your adversary, the devil, prowls around. Peter paints a good picture here of a lion, standing up, marching around, prowls like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, seeking someone, just roaring. Isn't it interesting, that picture that he paints, that he's like a roaring lion, trying to scare others. And you ever see a video of or maybe you've seen a lion at a zoo or something, man, when they roar, oh my goodness. And for some people, they don't even have to be attacked. The roar makes them run. Some people just the sound of the roar is enough to scare them, and they just take off running. They don't try to stand whatsoever. They don't try to see what's going on. They just hear the sound of the roar, and before you know it, they're completely gone. They're scared, and they're running with everything that is within them. Let's talk about this attack. He prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour, looking for somebody to attack, looking for a situation that he can use. Let me give you a couple of things to think about, a couple of points about responding to an attack. Responding to an attack. Number one, reveal the source. Number one, reveal the source. You say, what do you mean by that, Pastor? How do you? Well, know exactly where it's coming from. Whatever you're facing, whatever you feel like might be attacked, wherever you're feeling this, reveal it. What is it? As I said before, the devil don't always send it. He can get in it, but he don't always send it. Sometimes we can be battling things that are within us. You could be someone that deals with anxiety or other types of mental health challenges. And the reason that I say this is because the devil, as we've said many, many times, is an opportunist, and he will do his best to use that against you. You want to defeat him. So you got to reveal the source. You got to find out, is this something that I'm dealing with in myself? And the reason that I say that is you can defeat him even